The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yogananda ji and by his Guru Sri Yukteswar ji, who was guided by Baba ji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week's title is The Importance of Soul-Receptivity. Chapter 1 of the Gospel of St. John states, "But as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name." This was a passage Paramahansa Yogananda often quoted to his disciples. "Be in tune," he would tell them. "Delusion can't touch you if you will keep in tune. A few of you will fall," he said once, "but it needn't be if you would stay in tune." Of a disciple who became highly advanced, even though she didn't meditate much, he said she got there by attunement. To one who found meditation difficult, he said, "I will meditate for you as long as you stay in tune." Truth is a state of consciousness, not a well-worded definition. It is in that consciousness above all that our lives are transformed. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "To those who are ever attached to me, and to those who worship me with love, I impart discernment, by means of which they attain me. Out of my love for them, I, the divine within them, set alight in them the radiant lamp of wisdom, thereby dispelling the darkness of their ignorance." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This reading is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda, a book of prayer poems. And this one is entitled, "Flood Me with Thy Omnipresent Love." O fountain of love, flood the lowlands of our love for home and family with Thy omnipresent love. O mighty source of all our rivers of desire, teach us not to cut ourselves off from Thee, hunting on dry sands of sense satisfaction. Love is our soul's birthright. We demand now that all the rivers of our cravings be redirected through valleys of humility, eager self-sacrifice, and concern for others, until, reinforced by Thy torrential blessings, they merge in the ocean of all fulfillment in Thee. Bless us that the rivulets of our sympathy, affection, and love lose not themselves in the sands of dreary selfishness. Let the little, lonely, separately moving streamlets of our love, which come from Thee, merge at last in the vastness of Thy perfect love. The readings in this book, Rays of the One Light, that we read from every Sunday, are structured in a particular sequence, and meaning an intentional sequence. And so we began the year, if you can believe it, it's only week 5, I think, of the year. Week 6. See, it's week 6. Okay, feels like week 6 then. No, it's just we're such a short number of weeks into the year, and already we're kind of used to writing 2024. I don't write 2023 much anymore, but still. And the first readings in the book are about basically that God exists, how God manifested the universe through the Om vibration and so on. We read some of them, but between Master's birthday and Pongal, we had a few sort of disruptions. So our coverage was spotty at best, but we had other things that were coming up. And then, from sort of, this is the nature of not our existence only, but everything that exists, we came into 2 readings that went together last week and the week before, which were about Avatar, how God sends souls down to earth to help uplift everyone. And last week's reading was a more personal aspect that, yes, God sends a self-realized being, one who knows Him, to help others to attain that, but also to know that just as the avatars have human lives outwardly, so it appears, so that they're relatable, just as they are like us, so we are like them, was the point of last week's reading, that this is also our potential. In other words, the avatar doesn't come down just for us to worship and adore and say Arriva, and then applaud from the sidelines. You can, if you've ever had that experience, you're trying to help someone or you're trying to share something with someone, teach them a skill, for example, and all they can do is say, "Wow, you're so amazing." And you say, "Well, it's fine, but it's just about making toast. You can do it too." And then, no, I never could make toast the way you make toast. It's toast, and at a certain point when you're on your own and if I'm not there, you're going to want it. And so make it, In other words, let's not get too tripped up in the sort of awe of the masters without also following what they say. You can imagine that you must have had that experience, again, if you're trying to help someone who is basically very adoringly and respectfully resisting your help. And that it's a universal and eternal sentiment. Jesus put it this way. He said to his disciples, why do you say to me, Lord, Lord? Meaning, why do you call me your Lord, but you don't do the things that I say? So it's really, you can sort of feel his exasperation. And so the reading today then is about, okay, if God sends the avatars here, and if we are supposed to follow their teachings and receive their help, how do we do it? And that's the subject for today, attunement. Ottiseyan, it is in Tamil. But this word is, as far as I know, Master created the word, or else sort of was the first to use it in such. It's more commonly used now in many different areas. But before, Master putting it out there in 1946 in Autobiography of a Yogi and earlier, I don't know how much it was used. What does the word attunement even mean if we just try to translate it sort of directly in English? So attunement, to attune, or to tune. So the word tune as a verb, well, we know the context of one is to tune a radio. You may remember back in ancient days, or maybe you've seen pictures of these things called radios. And they're these devices with these knobs that you turned to get to a particular frequency, a particular radio station. Now radio, you just click. So you have to click in the right place, but that's about all there is to it. But with this, you had to, move the dial, and you had to do it sensitively to get the station that you wanted to hear the thing that you were looking for. And so you couldn't just move the dial, which, kids would often do. Someone would say, stop it. And so you tune the knob, and you have to listen until you get close to it. I mean, you can figure out it's 108 FM, so you go over there. It only goes up to 106, I think. But anyway, then you turn it just carefully, but you have to listen to, okay, that's what I want, but you'll still hear some static or some overlap or something, and so you have to adjust it finely till it comes in perfectly clearly. And that's a good example. Master used the radio a lot. It was, there in his time. And that tuning into the right station, you could say. And so he pushed the image further and said there are so many radio programs passing through this room right now in the form of radio waves. But we don't hear them unless we turn our radio receiver on and pluck them out of the air, and then we can hear them. And he said, so it is with God, so it is with thoughts of divine thoughts. And he said thoughts are universally rooted, not individually rooted. There are waves of thoughts, waves of consciousness that we can tune into. And that even if we don't consciously try to attune to, they will also affect us. And so there's a lot to that subject. So another way we use the word tune, if we're going to tune something, is to tune an instrument. But when you're tuning an instrument, you have to tune it relative to something. In other words, it has to match something. If it's a piano or a guitar, it has to match itself. But even that first string, the first note, you can't match it to anything because it's the first. So by definition, there's nothing before it. And so for that one, if you were just playing by yourself, you could just pick anything and just say, okay, this is the note that I'm going to say is G or whatever, and then I'm going to make everything else match that. But guitarists don't do that. They need often a tuner, either something that makes a sound or an electronic device that tells them, okay, this is correct. That way, when they play with other people, all the music, all the instruments go together. And this you must have seen in any kind of dance performance or where you have a little group of musicians. One person, say the violinist or I guess it's usually the flute too anyway, they'll play a note and the others will tune their instruments to match it. How do you do that? Again, do they take the knobs on the violin, for example, and go and have fun with it? No, they have to listen. And then they make a sound, and then they carefully tune it, small adjustments, just like with the radio, to match. So again, in that case, we have even a better example in a way, because with the radio, I guess you're adjusting the knob a little bit, you're listening. But somehow playing an instrument feels more dynamic than just turning a knob. And with the instrument, you have to listen to tune it, but you also have to act to match it. So listening, but also matching in our action. In other words, just listening, yes, 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 definitely. It's not enough. That's what Jesus was saying. You're listening to me because you're calling me Lord, and you're quiet when I talk, possibly. But you're not matching. You're not doing the things that I say. And so it wasn't that they weren't doing anything that he said, but he was exhorting them to not just say, oh yes, only you. He was saying, come along. He said later, the things that I have done, which were miracles, he said, you will do, and greater things. It's quite amazing thing. And so there are stories after his passing of how his disciples did many of those same miracles. Again, just like you hear of Indian yogis and masters. So how does this attunement manifest in the beginning when someone is not at all interested in the spiritual path at all? The attunement comes, what should we attune ourselves to? Because the importance of soul receptivity, that's another way to understand attunement. If it's important, it should be important on all levels and apply to people wherever they are. And so this attunement or this receptivity, which again, receptivity, receiving, listening, comes in the form of being interested in what is true. Interest in the truth, an openness to the truth, trying to understand the truth of a situation, trying to understand the truth of our existence, but caring about truth is really the first step. And until someone cares about truth, they're really just, if they're not caring about truth, which, I mean, how does that manifest? I was having a debate with someone who was consciously trying to prove that what I was doing was wrong. And he came up with different arguments, because he didn't like what I was doing. That was the point. The truth was he didn't like it, and he was very attuned to that truth. I don't like it. Ada Vendam. And so he tried to come up with different arguments, and I met those arguments with logic, with reason. And every time he sort of made a statement, I challenged his sources for that statement. I asked for footnotes, references, periodicals. What's the proof of this big, grand statement that it's actually true? And then at one point, when I brought up one particular challenge like that, he said, I don't have time to research it. I said, well, you have time to form your opinion, But based on what? It's just an opinion then. It's not truth. He cared about truth to some extent, because he could have said no, but he acknowledged that, okay, good point. So, but at the end of it he said, you may be smarter than I am, but I'm still right. And it wasn't a brain contest. It was just, as Swamiji said, I try to convince people by sweet reason or nothing else. So, or sweet reason alone. Just, if it's not reason, if they don't want to reason, then leave it. Because it doesn't matter, because they're not listening anyway. They're too committed. Master used to say of such a person, if they are convinced against their will, they are of the same opinion still. And so we have to allow for that sometimes, and we have to look at it in ourselves too, because sometimes, for example, we might have somebody who kind of bothers us, and every time they say something, it's a criticism or a correction, or yeah, you didn't really do that well, or yeah, I've seen better, all this. And we can kind of develop a habit of just kind of, when they come into the room, we tense with will. And when they leave, only can we relax and feel. But we have to remember, too, that God can speak through anyone. And Swamiji was in a conversation with someone who wanted to meet with him, and she had this habit of just talking and talking all kinds of nonsense, as he put it. And when he was listening to her, he found himself kind of, kind of glancing at his watch, seeing, okay, how long is this going to take? And then he thought, wait a minute, that's not a very humble attitude. God can speak through anyone, can use anyone to help me. And so he's in that moment, he said, let me listen attentively to her. And just then she said something. She gave him a piece of advice about the community, he said, that he really needed. And so we have to be open to what God is trying to say through someone if he chooses to speak through them. Don't feel that everything they say is from God. They may feel that way, but that's just listen. And so Swamiji put it so beautifully. And again, we can't be caught up in our likes and dislikes. We have to be open to truth wherever it comes from, is my point. He said, consider the merits of a suggestion regardless of its source. Don't worry about who said it. If you're having a meeting and there's someone who always says, well, that's not going to work because of whatever, when you're trying to be creative and come up with ideas, and but consider it, don't consider who said it. Meaning, don't hold it against them, just consider the validity of it. That's one example in which our likes and dislikes can cloud our perception of truth. So we have perception of truth, and at a certain point, it leads people, in our context anyway, who are even interested in attunement, to the spiritual path. And so you could say that then the way to attune to truth becomes attuning to truth through spirit, through God. And truth is just truth. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a divine truth. It's just that if you pursued truth deep enough, you get to the divine truth, because it is the truth. I was studying mathematics and science, trying to get to the truth of reality through math and science. And I found that it was slow going, that I was enjoying what I was doing. It was deeply satisfying. But when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, I thought, I could not have gotten to Kriya Yoga through trigonometry. I could not have the things that I was studying. I couldn't write in a computer program that would then spit out, meditate, do Kriya, find God. This was beyond, or let's just say it would take a very long time. How many incarnations. So I moved from pursuing truth in that direction to seeking it through God. I wish I had started there, but that was the way my journey was. And so we look to God, we look to the spiritual heart of reality of these matters to say, okay, this is where I'm going to find my joy, this is what works. And it doesn't mean we leave off everything else, but we see that this is at the core. And so people begin to meditate, for example, in our context here. And again, we might think that, okay, in level 2, for example, we cover Raja Yoga, and that people are learning the truth of the yoga science. But so many of my friends here, when I talk to them, and I later, let's say a year later after they've taken level 2, and I bring up some subject, you remember, as you learned in level 2, I get sort of a nervous look back. Like, yes. Or sometimes an honest, did we? Was that covered? With one friend of mine, I reminded him that one of his good friends now was in the class with him in level 2. And he said, no, this isn't even what we covered. This is just who was there with you. No, he wasn't. He said, he was. No. In this, you are mistaken. So I finally had to produce a photograph that I dug out of, my phone's history. See, there you are. But you see, so then what are we even getting out of level 2? Should we just skip it? Or are we doing something wrong? What people absorb in level 2 is not, with Raja Yoga, the course, is not necessarily the information. One hopes, especially if the one is imparting the information, it's rather humbling when you find out. Irda, Pingala, Sushumna, no one ever covered that, just sort of. So, but the people are attuning. They're feeling the vibration of the place. They're meditating, and the meditation is working on them. They're getting to know what it's like to be in a spiritual environment, to have satsang with other people who think in a similar way. They're absorbing a lot, but it's not necessarily verbal or intellectual only, let's say, or verbal or intellectual at all. But when we offered the course for the first time, Raja Yoga for Kriya Bonds, we had many sign-ups. Yes, Raja Yoga, something I've always wanted to study. Again. But it was true. Why did we offer it? Because once you've taken Kriya initiation, you can approach these subjects from a different perspective. Even if you haven't taken Kriya initiation, a year on the spiritual path will help you'll revisit the topics again with a new perspective. Why? Because in level 2, also, as we're starting out, we don't know yet that this is our thing. Even if we know maybe, yes, this is my thing, this is my path, it still takes time to prove that to ourselves. So we come now to the subject of the Guru. This is where all of this leads. I want truth, I want God, and I'm discovering that has to come through a Guru. Why? Well, you read Autobiography of a Yogi, and it seems that everywhere you turn, there's someone who has a Guru. Everybody has a Guru. And, we can't help but think a little personally, and then we say, what about my Guru? Yara? Enge? It seems to be something one has or should seek. And so this is not an intellectual decision, though. This is definitely about attunement, and our heart has to make this decision on its own. And things can help, but it can't be prescribed. It can't be taught. This is something very, not only personal and individual, but again, sensitive. It's deeper than just intellectual, or it's at least intellectual and also from a different perspective, from the heart. We need both. It's deeper than even that, but this is enough to start with. Meaning, Master said, I believe, though I haven't found the source of it, but people have said that Master said that when the soul is first individually manifested, meaning separate from the divine flame, but just as a spark, that God assigns the Guru at that time. This is the Guru who is going to lead the soul back to God. It doesn't mean that the soul only ever follows that Guru. It may take a lot of lifetimes of following other teachers to reach that Guru, the Sat Guru, the true Guru. Now, when we find our Guru, this is really the way the disciple attunes to God, is through the Guru. Master said, "He who is in tune with me, it tunes not with me, but him that sent me." This was a line that Jesus said, "He who follows me follows not me, but him that sent me." Or he that sent follows him that sent me. And so the same thing with Master was saying that if you attune with me, it's not that follow me, but you're getting, God is helping you through this channel, you could say. Again, as you all know, when someone said, basically, to shorten the story, "Aren't these your disciples?" He said, "I never call anyone my disciple. They're God's disciples." So it wasn't that he was putting himself there, and anyone who does do that, claiming the role of a guru, is only acting. It's false. Why? Because when you're one with God, when you've seen the greatness of God, you wouldn't say, seeing how wonderful that is, "Well, you should also see me, though, because I'm pretty great too." You can't help it. It's magnificent what you've glimpsed. And I understand that more after Swamiji's passing, because Swamiji could only talk about Master's greatness, and we would say, "Yes, Swamiji, but you're pretty great too." And he would say, "I'm nobody. The only relevance I have is in relation to Master." And yet, I have seen that's how I feel, that sometimes people will say, "Oh, that's a wonderful thing that you said." I said, "Isn't it? It's something Swamiji said. It's nothing to do with me. We're just sharing the teachings as we've received them, and they touch us, each of us at our core, because that power to receive it is already in us to some extent. A truth," Swamiji said, "can't be taught. It can only be recognized. Things can't really be learned. It's more that you remember them, you discover them." And you can say, "Well, I've learned some things in my life that I didn't know before, like trigonometry." Okay, fine, but there was probably a point when learning all of these new words and symbols, something clicked, and then it made sense. Again, when something makes sense, it's because half of the sense is already in you, and you're putting it together, and then you realize, like remember. It's like you see again, okay, now I have it. And so the ways that we can attune to the Guru are many, and those of you who have taken the level 3 classes, this is something that we cover in terms of looking at Master's picture, listening to his words, listening to, meaning his recordings, but also reading his books. And it's so helpful and so necessary to have a daily diet of attunement, to constantly, meaning every day, frequently, do something that is, especially if it's new, like read another section of a book from Master, or read a book of Master's that you haven't read already. To keep it alive and fresh in our mind. Why? Because the needle of our radio is always drifting a little bit off. This is the nature of this manifested existence. It's nothing to be sad about. It happens to everyone. We all have to adjust the knob, adjust the dial every day to stay right on the right frequency to get Master. It doesn't mean that he won't come and he says, "I'm right here helplessly, but you haven't tuned to me." No, he's always trying to help us to tune, but we have to do our part also. I mean, you think about it. He put the radio waves through the ether. He bought us the radio. He taught us how to use it. And now we're saying, "Can you tune it also?" I can't reach it from here. It's not much that we have to do to tune, compared to everything that he's given us. But how do we do it? We have to want to. And so that's another thing to keep in mind. The easiest way to develop attunement with the Guru, attunement with the truth, is to be interested, to want to. So if you're not interested, just pretend that you are. If you don't want to, pretend that you do. And sometimes we find this, that I don't feel like meditating, but okay, I'm just going to sit here just so I can say that I sat there for 2 seconds, and I'm going to do just a little prayer. God, well, actually, this is the reason I am so tired, because of this problem. And we suddenly start opening up. We go from this, I have to solve all my problems by myself, there is no help, to, oh, I could share this with God. God at least will listen to me and will hear this out. Maybe I can pray about it. And you know what? I would like to meditate a little bit just to feel happier. That's the secret of meditation, is that it makes us happier. And who doesn't want to be happier? I mean, who do you find that says, I'm happy enough? I'm as happy as I want to be. I mean, people will say that when you ask them to meditate, they'll say, I'm happy enough. But in terms of really what they're saying is, I want that, because that's going to make me happier. I remember someone, he was very much involved with Ananda as a spectator, and in a very involved way. I guess I can say it without giving it away. He was working on a movie that involved many Ananda people, a movie that you've seen. And so but which movie? That's where I still am protecting his identity. So he was saying, you guys are so wonderful, and I've just not met people like this. What really worked was when he met Swamiji as the initial stage of the project, and they hit it off immediately. And so then we knew this was going to work. And he had a perfect perspective. But I was meeting him for tea after the movie was done. And he said something like, it's just amazing and how everybody is, and they're so calm, and yet they're so high energy and concentrated. It's nice. And I said, yeah, maybe you'd be interested maybe one day in meditation. I'm good. I'm just fine. Okay. And again, I'm sure he's right. Just because something works for us doesn't mean it would work for everyone. And even if this path works for us, it doesn't mean this spiritual path, this flavor, might work for everyone. But you have to find it. But many of us have already made that decision as disciples, as Kriyabans. And so, again, though the reading emphasizes the importance of attunement by saying, even in a sense more so than meditation, that there was a woman who didn't meditate much at all, and Swamp Master said she got there by attunement. Still, one of the easiest ways to attune and to be in tune is to meditate. But you see, there's a difference there. Meditation without attunement is something, but it's just not quite enough. And I kind of discovered this. I came to this spiritual path through Autobiography of a Yogi and these teachings directly. I really didn't have any other exposure. It was the first thing that I studied. I tried to study other books. They were very impressive sounding. I felt that if I could read the Yogas by Swami Vivekananda, I don't know if you've seen it, it's about 10 times the width of this book. I thought if I could read and understand that, not even understand it, just read it, then I would be self-realized at the end. I'd have to be. But I couldn't get past the first chapter. It didn't help that I would read it before going to bed. But still, it was just, I couldn't, nothing against the book, it just wasn't mine. I kept bouncing off. Whereas Autobiography of a Yogi, I just couldn't turn the pages fast enough, or else would stop and just, wow, this is amazing. It really spoke to me. But I started making statements in classes not long ago, which is to say 10 years ago, or that don't worry about the yamas and the niyamas. This was back in the level 2 days. Meaning, focus on them if you like, especially if you find them inspiring. But if it seems like too much, or it seems like a list of these are all the things that you are doing wrong, which it isn't. But anyway, it's often taken that way. Even the 10 commandments that are in the Bible, 10 commandments, sort of 10 ordinances from Chennai Corporation. Master said these should be called the 10 rules of eternal happiness. They're for your own happiness. They're for your own benefit and joy. And it's basically saying something you might have the impulse to do, check that impulse, because others before you have done it and have been unhappy. They have regretted it. Let's start with the first one, thou shalt not kill. And so you say, okay, somebody tried it, then went to jail, and then was killed, and said, you know what, I wish I hadn't. So anyway, rather than rediscover that ourselves, why don't we, okay, thank you, mental note, I will learn that. It's much more than that, though. You can say, look, I didn't kill anyone on the way here, which is good, but killing is much more than physical taking of life. What about when we kill someone's enthusiasm? Someone comes up and says, oh my gosh, I just saw this new movie. It's fantastic. So you say, I already saw it. Yeah, and then he saves her in the end. Yeah. You can't teach me. I know it all. And the person, you say, I would never do that. Maybe it's been done to you. You see, we have to be aware of, let someone have their enthusiasm. And let's applaud it. Especially, what if we liked the movie, but there's this ego thing that comes up, and just relax and say, yeah, as if you're enjoying in the moment with the person that time. Why have to push it down? So looking for things like that. How can I encourage someone rather than discourage? Discouraging is a kind of killing. Encouraging or discouraging ourselves is the same thing. So again, if we're too discouraging to ourselves, look for ways to encourage, to support, to give life to ourselves. We have a lot to celebrate, and anyway, a lot of the things we complain about to ourselves we can't do anything about, at least in the short term, but there are a lot of things we can do. And self-criticism, complaining, guilt are often just an excuse we give ourselves to not actually have to improve the situation. You see, it's that I'm not doing anything, but I feel guilty about it. Does that count? No, it doesn't count. Because it doesn't help you. That's the reason. That's like the doctor saying, take this medicine. I'm not taking it, but I feel guilty that I'm not taking it. Will that cure me? No. So just take the pill, or whatever it is. But we have to do that work. And so putting out that willpower, affirming, I want to be happier and it's within my power to do something. How do we get there if we don't feel even that way? Meditation can help. In most circumstances, meditation can help. Serving is another wonderful way. As we were reading in the Whispers from Eternity, helping others to feel happy gives us joy. And it helps that joy grow. If we only think of what will make me happy, we're just taking. And you can only receive so much until you have to give for that law for it to then start to act and come back to you. It's more than that, but that's a step from this level of consciousness that I'm talking about. So to come back to level 2, I was saying don't worry about the yamas and the niyamas. If you just do Hong Sa, if you just meditate, you will develop automatically these qualities. Why? Well, for example, not to speak harshly to someone. Why? Because the more you meditate, the more calm you become, and the less irritable you become. So when somebody pokes at you, you're less likely to react after the first poke, or even in anticipation of the poke. I see that there's going to be a poke, and I'm going to blast first. A friend of mine said that. She said, it's so hard for me. My mom is always shouting at me. So whenever I see her, I shout at her first, because I know she's going to shout. I said, wow, never heard of that. The best defense is a good offense. So the ability to get calmer through meditation is one way that we speak harshly less frequently. But another is that when we do anything wrong, after we start meditating, having that habit, that skill, our heart starts to feel badly about it. Whereas before, we never bothered us at all. Yeah, I mean, sure, I feel bad. It's nothing compared to what they did. And besides, everybody does it. So what is it, all kinds of self-justification. But that's what people do to cover up that hurt. So our heart doesn't really want to go in that direction. We lose our taste for misbehavior. It's not worth it to us anymore. It's not just, I'm not tempted. It's that, do I really want to shout and then have to spend an hour cleaning up the mess that I made? And I'm sorry, and yes, no, you're right, and I shouldn't have done that, and all that. Why don't I just not do it? And so, this is progressive, of course. But so I said, you will automatically develop these qualities if you meditate. And a friend of mine said to me afterwards, who was in the class, but is that true? He said, because I was meditating for 10 years, and I don't think I was developing any of these qualities. And putting aside the fact that we're often our own worst critic, and I know the person well and think he probably was developing these qualities, still I wanted to honor the sincerity of his perspective and of his question. And I had to admit that there was another part of at least my experience and the experience of what I've seen people here. We are meditating under the guidance and blessing of Paramhansa Yogananda. In a way, this friend of mine was too, but meaning during those 10 years. But there is a great power of attunement there's a great power that attunement gives us beyond just the act of meditating. That's why I was saying meditation without attunement is okay, but it's not enough. Meaning, it's not satisfying enough, it doesn't work well enough. Or to put it another way, if you're meditating with attunement, you may find yourself making great strides and just think, oh, it's the meditation. Swamiji says this in the Level 3 book, A Handbook of Discipleship. He said, I've noticed that people who meditate and who are on this path develop spiritually, develop very well, develop very much, out of proportion to the time that they've been meditating. Meaning much more than you would reasonably expect meditation would help them. They've gained way beyond that. And so what is this sort of secret ingredient? It's attunement. And so, as its master quoted that in the Bible all the time, as Prasanna read, that to those who received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, the children of God. And so that's really the gift that the Guru has to give us, is that he has that power. And that power resides in him alone. I mean, all self-realized gurus, any of them. But still, in other words, we don't really have that power of self-realization. We have that potential, sure. But he has that. It's sort of like, the mother is making food, or whoever does the cooking is making the food, and is ready to serve it. The child says, no, that's fine, I have my own food. I made some food. And what do you see? There's like these 2 little half-eaten biscuits from yesterday. Yeah, this is my food. It's like the Amma has the power. And the food, just let's clear our plate and receive it with gratitude, and then help wash the dishes afterwards. In other words, let's contribute also. I can't help but share this story. I was trying to find a way to work it in, and I have found it. So I was saying, help Amma with the dishes, or whoever. Prasanna was receiving some guests recently, a man and his wife and sister. And Prasanna said to them, why don't you meditate up in the temple, and while you do that, I'll make tea, and then we can have tea together afterwards. And the gentleman said, but the ladies are here, they can make the tea. And Prasanna did not say, oh yeah, great, good point. Prasanna, but he also didn't say, sir, I beg your pardon. Because you see how there's laughter in certain sections of the room. And so Prasanna said very smoothly, but they always make tea. Let this be my chance. I'll make the tea, and you all meditate. And they didn't say anything, but he noted these broad smiles on the women. So again, we should all share in the work. So as we learned during the pandemic, and then some people forgot after the pandemic. Anyway, I remember at Ananda village, one wife and husband were there from India visiting, and they were all wearing aprons because they were serving food and didn't want to get the food on their clothes. And the wife said, I have to take a picture to show my daughter because otherwise she will never believe it. So anyway, the attunement with the Guru we express, as I said, there are many ways to develop, and it is that secret ingredient that changes us. And how do we get more attunement? We have to express our interest. We have to develop interest. We have to fake an interest even. If we're faking it to ourselves, not to anybody else. Because just opening the book, reading one sentence, might be enough to sort of get us going. That thing that I read last week where Master said, this is how you can pray to your loved ones and they can come to you in a dream. And someone asked him, but what if they've already reincarnated? And Master said, their ever-aware astral body, they will be able to respond through that. And that makes you think a bit. Their ever-aware astral body, someone was asking me afterwards, their body, what about my ever-aware astral body? Like, does my astral body know everything about me? Like, does my astral body know things that I don't know? Yes, it knows everything. Everything is recorded. That's quite a thought in itself, just that I'm carrying around this suitcase of all these secrets about myself. It's right here. What's the combination? It's K-R-I-Y-A. Ah, there, it opens it up. In other words, you can access it, but it's quite a chilling thought that I know more than I know. Just that doesn't that doesn't feel fair. So again, just that one sentence from the reading starts to wake us up, starts to provoke even all kinds of thoughts and even a different approach to meditation. Yes, self-realization, also just more self-awareness. I would like to know myself better. Many times we're a mystery even to ourselves. We react to things, we don't know why. Only after a lot of introspection do we discover that, you know what, this reminds me of something from my past that I didn't like. And I didn't realize it, but that's what it is. And I'm kind of giving that past reaction to this present reality. There was someone who was really mad at me once and Dharminian me for a reason that didn't seem quite appropriate. And at one point we had to say, look, you haven't known us long enough to have been this tortured by us. I mean, it's only been a few months or whatever. We couldn't have been, we couldn't have racked up this many offenses in such a short amount of time. It's just not humanly possible. Even if every day we sinned against you, still, that would only be like 60 sins. And you're saying it's 6,000. So what else is going on here? And the person sort of said, yeah, you're right. And, I'm upset with so-and-so from my family. And so our attunement then, also, we attune to Master in another way through meditation. We attune to him by doing his techniques. This is one thing that disciples commit to when they take discipleship, is to practice Master's techniques. Because it's like taking a subject in college. In order to go deep, you really have to focus. And to strengthen your attunement, you need to practice Master's techniques, and just to spell it out, meaning Master's techniques only. Because through that, he can help you. And when we mix things up, we're mixing different vibrations, and it's harder to progress that way. It's like having a foot and two boats. And it seems attractive, and I know the reasons why people will sort of restlessly pursue such things. And it's something to just work on. If you find that's a temptation for you, just work on it. Don't feel guilty. Don't be frustrated. But again, it's like we already have the airplane route. We just need to use it. But it's sort of like, I have an airplane here, but I'd like to have a second airplane. Okay, but how many can you travel in at once? You can put your luggage in the other one, but you can only sit in one seat. And the point is not to have the airplane. The point is to fly, and to fly home to God. That's the point. So we work on ourselves in this way. Again, another aspect of attunement. And you may have heard me say, because I have said, and you may have heard it, that we talked about the lifestyle at Ananda when people were a period where they were trying to sort of infuse new inspiration into the community life, spiritual path, and so on. Someone, in fact, described the spiritual path as CPR, a constant process of re-inspiration. And that's another thing of what I've been saying about reading one line of Master will give us a new inspiration. Each day's meditation gives us some new life, some new inspiration, and it's needed. It's absolutely needed. Why is our needle drifting on the radio? I forgot to mention. Maya. That's why. Every night we meditate and get that knob turned just perfectly, and then Maya comes and goes, changes it. And then we have to wake up in the morning and meditate again and get that knob back. And then during the day, while we're out, Maya, you see? So Maya is always doing that. How? Through our karma, through the influence of other people directly, or just their thoughts. As I said, thoughts are universally rooted. You're in a room full of people who think that pursuing God is a waste of time, and it starts to affect you, if only to sort of make you stronger against it, to sort of raise your shields for protection. But that takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort to keep out. But what about what you're taking in? You have to come to a place where you can also receive. And so that's why this constant need to adjust, as opposed to, oh, I am not sincere, that's why my concentration wanders, that's why my desire. It's not that way. I mean, if it were that way, then, even Swamiji said that about someone who was behaving in a very insincere way. And he said to Master, when Master said, you were cold towards him because he had sort of made appointments with Swamiji repeatedly and not met with him, and not like in Swamiji's home, but someplace far away that Swamiji had to travel half the day to get there, then the man wouldn't come. And Swamiji said, Master, he's not sincere. And Master said, where would you all be if I treated you that way? Just a correction that, of course, someone's not sincere. So what? Let's give them what we can. Now, Master also said, if I try to help someone, to help someone, I offer them my hand. But if they hid it away, I offer them my other hand. But if they hid that away, then I put it in my pocket. And is he saying, in life everybody gets 2 chances, but no more? No. He's just saying, look, do you want help? No. Do you want help? No. Okay. Then I'll wait. You see, in other words, we shouldn't just 3 hands, 4 hands, 10 hands. I'm always here to help. Smack. I'm here to help still. At a certain point, they will get help by growing on their own. We have to let them grow on their own. So, this attunement then, as I was saying, let us do what we can to deepen our attunement, and let's do it every day through a constant process of re-inspiration. So during one of these processes of re-inspiration, the people at the community, when I say community, I mean Ananda Village, came up with the 5 S's. This is again what you may remember me saying, that sort of define the core of our life. And so satsang, or the practices you could say, satsang, sadhana, seva, then also study. And hopefully you can see how all of these fit into what I've been saying today. And then what's the last one? Because you could say, thank you. I was saying it metaphoric. I mean, what's the word? What's the word when you say something? I've lost the word. Huh? I was going to say metaphorically, but that's not what I meant. But there's another word I'm missing. Anyway, maybe you all know the word. But thank you, Prem already jumped out with it. The last one is Swamiji, or spiritual director. In other words, they said Swamiji, and Swamiji said spiritual director. Don't say Swamiji. But what is that? It's like, well, where's attunement? Is it sattunement? No, but that's what they meant. Attuning to Master, to God through Swamiji. And that is, think of the song that we just sang, Cloisters, that we did earlier this morning, how it gives you something. And how these readings are written by Swamiji, and how even this Whispers from Eternity was edited by Swamiji. In other words, the affirmation, so much of what we have in this way of life following Master has been given to us through Swamiji. He's been the channel through which it has come to us. It's just a fact. And so, being able to also study, learn from him, and to also, the simple fact that none of us have met Master in the body, but that we feel so close to him. How is it possible? One big secret is because Swamiji felt so close to him, and Swamiji shared that with us. He included us in his closeness. Yes, Master has his own power, certainly, but he acts through channels. He himself said that. He acts through his disciples. And so keep that in mind, that one easy way to develop attunement is to study Swamiji's things, to watch videos of his, to receive Master through him. And so again, Swamiji and attunement, that S goes with attunement. And I noticed when I was trying to connect more with Swamiji, if I would write to him about a real problem in my life, a real crossroads, I would always get a response. But if I was writing just kind of out of a mood or out of a preference or just sort of, hey, how you doing? I never wrote like that. But still, just kind of coming from wherever I was, I might get a reply back, short, 1 line, nice to hear from you, maybe. but oftentimes I wouldn't. And then, for example, when he was writing a book and he would send out a chapter of the book and I would read it and have thoughts about it, or, which were, this is so wonderful, I always got a reply back that, glad you liked it. And so I began to notice a pattern that it wasn't just if I complimented him, though it was very sincere, if I did, but it was that if I put my mind where his mind was, suddenly we were engaging in that way. Because I might suppose I wrote about some other book that I had just read and was so fantastic. Maybe he might write back, but oftentimes he wouldn't. It's one of his books, but it was where his focus was now. And I realized that this was a way, and other people said this, that we can help support Swamiji in the work he was doing. These are ways we can give energy. So he's writing a book. So how do we give energy? We can say, I could proofread it for you. I notice you put the apostrophe in the wrong place. Try it. But the thing is, that's not nearly as supportive as, if we brought up a sincere question, like, I don't understand this part, he would often say, that's a good point, let me revisit it. Or sometimes he would say, well, I think you are alone in your misunderstanding because everyone else has said it makes sense to them, and I had to accept that if that was true. But it was also to just appreciate what he was doing. It wasn't that he was saying, does anybody like what I'm doing? But it was an exchange of energy. He was putting all of this energy out, and what could we do to give back? Even just to say thank you. That's why the word thank you is so nice, because it means much more, and it's much softer than something like, even Miganandri, is just sort of like what the ambassador says to the king or something like that. And this is much more intimate. And again, we should be grateful for anything that anybody does for us. But we'll leave that aside because it's something you learn more through experience than just by preaching. But this, whenever I would put myself where he was, if he was in Italy and I would say, good luck with your big public program tonight and so on. Just, again, thinking, where is he? What's his mind on? Let me put my mind on it. It was a way of attuning. And so again, keep that in mind as well, that where is Swamiji now? Well, he's everywhere. But again, the books he's written, the videos I know when we're watching him, he's watching us. Maybe not through the video, but over your shoulder. You look behind. There, you see? So it's a wonderful way to do what? To follow the rules. We should be attuned. I will be attuned. See, I prove my attunement. I am now legal. No, it's to be happier and to find God. These are the things that work. That's why we're talking about them. These are the things that lead us to freedom. God bless you.